Well, hello and welcome to worship. This half term, we are looking at generosity, and we've had a really good look at what it means to be generous and how we can be generous. We've looked at how it means giving up our time and money and toys, and how sometimes it can be quite easy because we've got plenty of something, enough to go around and share, but sometimes it's a bit trickier. Sometimes we have to give sacrificially, even when we don't have a lot. And that sometimes we don't want to do that because we want to keep things for ourselves. We don't want to share. But God tells us it's a good thing to do. And He tells us He loves a cheerful giver. He wants us to be generous with our time and with our money and with our toys and to give to everyone because that's how He is. And today we're going to look at His generosity in creating the world. And you might not have thought about that before. You might just take for granted that we live in a beautiful world full of beautiful oceans and trees and flowers and lots of lovely colours and different seasons and animals. But actually, that was all created by God for us to enjoy. And not just to enjoy, but it's got everything we could possibly need to survive. And food and water, it's all there in part of creation. God thought everything through, didn't He? He did a really good job. So now we're going to have a good look at the days of creation, how God created the earth in 6 days, and then He rested. And then we're going to come back together.
God's story, creation. So part of God's story is about when He created the world, and it begins like this. Before the beginning of time, there was nothing. Nothing at all. No earth, no light, just emptiness. It was like the inside of a basketball, or a cup after you drink all the milk out of it. But God was there, and He had an idea. He wanted to fill up the emptiness. And guess what? Since He's God, He can make things appear just by speaking. It's like if you could say, "Let there be a roller coaster," and then any kind of roller coaster you wanted just appeared. So, in the middle of nothing, God said, "Let there be light," and the darkness was filled with light. Now, we know what light is, but remember, it had never existed before. Everything God made was brand new. So it was probably like when you're asleep, and someone comes in the room and flips on the lights. Except there were no people yet. God was creating a world for them first. Anyway, light was the first thing God made. He called the light day and the dark night. He made a huge space above water and called it sky. Then He gathered all the water, separated it from dry ground, and called it sea. He called the dry ground land. God called it all good. He thought what He had made was pretty sweet. But He wasn't done yet. All that land was still bare. So God made plants. Oak trees, palm trees, evergreen trees, grass, roses, sunflowers, and every other type of tree, bush, flower, or plant, including the ones we eat, like broccoli and Brussels sprouts. Then God looked at all the plants and called them good. Kids, that includes vegetables. After plants, God created the sun to shine all day and the moon to shine at night. He sprinkled twinkling balls of light in the sky and called them stars. And guess what? He called that stuff good too. Next, God filled the water with fish and whales and sharks and squid and every other sea creature. He filled the sky with flapping, chirping, squawking birds. And what do you think He called the fish and birds? Yep, good. Even though sometimes birds poop on our heads. Now there were fish and birds, but still nothing but plants on land. So God said, "Let there be animals." And animals of all kinds came crawling, scurrying, snorting, stomping, and racing across the dry ground. And just like everything else, God called the animals good. God was almost done, but He had one more thing to create that He had imagined from the very beginning when the earth was still empty. People. And He was going to love this creation more than anything else. See, the land and sky and animals and plants were beautiful, but none of them are as precious to God as we are. So finally, God created Adam. But God soon saw that Adam needed one more thing, a family. So God created Eve. And God's plan was for the two of them to have babies and live in this perfect world forever. No hunger, no sickness, no sadness, no loneliness, no dying. God took care of their every need like a loving father. It was perfect. God loved all His creation. Remember, He had called it all good. But when He looked at Adam and Eve and felt such a strong love for them, He called everything He had made very good. Then He rested to enjoy His perfect world. And that's the story of creation. So in case you missed it, here's the quick version. The earth was empty. God made light and dark. God made the sky and seas. God made plants and fish. God made birds and animals. He said all this stuff was good. Then He made Adam. Adam needed a family. So God made Eve. God called everything very good. Then God rested. And that's a part of God's story.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. I always like looking at the creation story because it reminds me that God's in control, that He made everything and that He made it good. He made it good for us to enjoy and with everything we could possibly need. Thought we could just recap each day. So on the first day, He made light and darkness, day and night. On the second day, He made the clouds and oceans. On the third day, He made land, plants and trees. On the fourth day, He made the sun, moon and stars. On the fifth day, He made fish and birds. On the sixth day, He made man and animals. And on the seventh day, He rested. And at the end of every day, He said, "It is good." He did a really good job. Even He realized that. And I think it's a good thing to do every now and then, to stop and reflect at the good world God's created. And at the moment it's springtime and you see lots of lovely lambs running around and the flowers popping up. And that reminds me of God's goodness and what a beautiful world He's created for me to enjoy. But I wondered if there's any other places that you've been to that particularly remind you of what a beautiful place we live in. For me, I chose 3 places, and one of them's Goredale Scar. Maybe you've been. It's a beautiful waterfall. The other one's Brimham Rocks. I'm sure most of you have been to Brimham Rocks. I just find it absolutely beautiful. And when you're sat on top of a rock and you look out, you just think, wow, this is amazing. God really did create a good world. But my absolute favourite is the Lake District. When I go to Keswick, when I go to the Lake District and you climbed up a mountain and you can see all the lakes in the distance, I find that absolutely amazing. And I am reminded of God's incredible generosity and love in creating a world not only that has everything we need to survive, but also that is absolutely beautiful and was made for our enjoyment and for us to treat wisely as well. We mustn't forget to treat it wisely and kindly because God's given us a beautiful, beautiful place to enjoy. So I hope you enjoyed this worship and I hope you think a little bit more about what a beautiful world we live in and how we need to be thankful for it.